All righty. Well, good, because the next item is item E2, an update and discussion regarding the COVID-19 schools reopening for 2020 and 2021. I know that you've been working to get this ready.
All right, so just want to thank you all for having us for another schools reopening update. The last one we did was on September 9th, and things have shifted a little bit since our last presentation. And I know that that all of our best laid plans as we're working through this pandemic, things don't always move in nice, tidy little orders. We are constantly evaluating, reevaluating our planning and ensuring that we are ready to go. I know it may feel like, and people have expressed concern that the delay to our schools restarting in TK through 5th grade has been due to our wanting a flawless opening, and just want to assure everybody that that's not the case. We have been wanting more than anything to get our kids back in school and needing to have all of our plans in place, from the operations as well as the teaching and learning. There's also been an expression of concern that maybe our inability to begin as we had originally planned was due to financial concerns, and that's not the case either. And a concern about not prioritizing our students. Throughout all of our planning, throughout everything that we have been doing to plan for distance learning as well as our hybrid reopening, all 5 of our phases to reopening our schools has been prioritizing students and also ensuring that we have staff available and ready for them when they do come back onto campus, even as we entered into the school year and our distance learning only or virtual learning academy. We did have to make a number of hires right before the new school year started. Luckily, we didn't have to delay or change our calendar for the start of the school year, as we were able to fill all positions right before school started. And so kind of where we are now and what brings us here in terms of our needing to delay the reopening is we had a meeting last Monday just to do a check-in on where are we, what left do we have to do. And what it really came down to is all of our planning. We've been able to check everything off of our list, but our big concern ended up being around staffing and needing a little bit more time related to filling or determining exactly solutions for certificated vacancies, classified vacancies, and also needing to expand and train our subpool. And then some of the technology that we're waiting for hadn't come in yet, and that was related to outfitting our classrooms as we have teachers coming back into the classrooms to provide in-person support, as well as at the same time some learning for our students who will remain in virtual learning academy. And we knew that we needed to do another check-in with families around what it is they wanted for their child once we do move into phase 3 or hybrid, in that there have been a number of emails that have come in from the beginning of the year expressing interest in changing what they had put in on their August 3rd survey. And so looking at the staffing needs that we had it on the certificated side, knowing that having confirmation from families as to what they were needing or wanting for their child, and confirming that, whether it was a virtual learning academy or to come into the hybrid model, that may very well impact or help to address some of our staffing needs. And so that survey, we just got the results yesterday was the deadline, and some families may still be turning it in, but we have enough of responses that we are able to, today we had a meeting and we're able to continue to plan and move forward. Last week, to try to assist families in understanding exactly what the schedule for the hybrid model looks like and how it would, what that would mean for their child, whether they were in the hybrid model or in the virtual learning academy model, that they would be able to have a really clear picture of what the school day would look like, the school week, and then be able to ask questions related so that they could make or confirm their choice for their child. And so Unfortunately, we did need to postpone the start of our hybrid model. And it was not an easy decision to make, but when we look at, in order to have children on campus, it is necessary and critical to also have adults on campus to ensure that they have teachers, ensure that there are classified employees supporting them, and supporting all of the operations of the school sites. So it wasn't a great or an easy decision to make. I'm really sorry for any consternation, anger, and all of the other feelings that come along with changes and delays. And so really just want to express apology for that, but knowing that we also needed to, in the best interest of our ability to reopen. And so let's see. I think I'll stop with that because I think we go through the presentation tonight, and I think it'll help to explain everything as well as what our new plans are for opening and hybrid.
Right.
Thank you.
So as Marcy said, we have our parent survey results back. And what this slide shows is it first shows the survey results from August 3rd. And on that survey, parents were asked to say that they're going to continue with in-person, they're going to move to in-person when it happens, that they are ready to commit to distance learning, or that they most likely would be committing to distance learning. And so what I have here, these are the numbers for parents, families at the beginning of August who were ready to commit to distance learning. And if we added in those who were most likely going to commit to distance learning along with those ready to commit, the numbers increase, of course, to 183. And these are our numbers from the survey that families have been taking over last week and over the weekend and up through yesterday. I updated the numbers at about 2 o'clock today. And so you can see that some sites, particularly Manor, have higher numbers of requests for distance learning, continued virtual academy. And what we as an administrative team are doing right now is looking at these numbers and looking at our staffing and looking for places where we can make changes in staffing, have some teachers. So for example, if you have a very large number of families that have requested distance learning, then you may be able to have a dedicated virtual learning teacher for that particular grade level at that site. And so also as a part of our conversation and a shift that we're making, we're really looking to problem solve site by site. And so things may not look exactly the same in every classroom and every grade level across the district, across sites, because things aren't the same, because different families have different requests and different teachers. We have staffing needs. Marcy, is there anything you want to add before I move to the next slide?
No, I think you've covered that. Thank you.
Okay. And then just giving you some percentages here. So we have a total of about 22.1% of our K-5 students who have requested continued virtual learning. And we also have the percentage for you for 6th grade, which is a quarter of our 6th grade families have requested virtual learning to continue in the virtual learning mode. And is this back to you, Marcy?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Alrighty, so in reviewing all of the data and the information, we were able to, from the survey results, we're able to go back in and what a difference a week makes. It was really helpful for human resources to be able to go through this last week and to clarify and confirm the leave requests, as well as reviewing the survey results to be able to look at where might we be able to, as Julia just explained on the previous slide, be able to place some dedicated virtual learning only teachers, and also what would that do to our staffing needs. So the good news is it greatly reduced our need for replacement teachers, and we will have to still continue to make our substitute pool robust, train the substitute pool, hold some interviews, But the delay in the reopening, it looks like we won't have to delay any further, that we have been able to land on where we are now set for beginning our hybrid model. And so as of this Friday, the 16th, the elementary sites will communicate with their families as to what their orientation and staffing plan is for their school site. And next week, the preparation for the sites will continue. And the following week is Monday again, remains in virtual learning. And then Tuesday, the sites, and it varies by site based on some sites have more students on the campus than others, bigger schools, and they will begin their orientations as we had originally planned, which was originally supposed to be set for this week. And then we will begin our first week of hybrid instruction beginning the week of November 3rd. Now that is Monday again is the virtual learning for all students day. And then moving into cohort A begins on Tuesday the 3rd, and they have Tuesday, Wednesday, and then cohort B begins on Thursday, November 5th, and that's Thursday and Friday of that week. So this is our TK through 5th grade reopening schedule. And we're I know this was a very difficult week, but at least for us in terms of our planning, we were able to get some resolution to some of the concerns that we had around being able to staff the classrooms. If we had not delayed, then we would have been really short staffed or not for sure known exactly what's happening. So this gives us a little bit more time to be able to fill positions and also to be able to get everything in order around the sites. Because as Julia mentioned in the previous slide, there may be some changes as to who some students will have as assigned as their teacher. We also need to make sure that the elementary to middle school cohorts for siblings are matched up. And so this also gives a little bit more time now that we know the survey results for that to occur. So anything else to add on that slide? I think I covered it there.
Got it.
Thank you.
All right, Matt Catanzari.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you, Marcy. I'm happy to be here to talk a little bit about White Hill. First of all, last Monday, October 5th, we held a town hall for our 6th grade parents, and I really appreciated all the questions and the dialogue that went on. A reopening timeline has been shared with our 6th grade families, and we are still moving forward with that timeline. And that would mean that next week, starting on Tuesday, the 20th, we're going to be starting our orientations, and they're going to be going through the week from the 20th to the 23rd. And as I emailed our families, 6th grade families yesterday, they can expect to receive cohort assignments and orientation dates and times by this Friday in email. So we still have some things to work through until we can start, but we are going forward with that timeline as of now. The first thing we need to do is we need to complete our MOU for 6th grade. Our next meeting is this Friday. We have to finalize the cohorts, and we've been working with the elementaries to make sure that the siblings are in the same cohorts, and we're just kind of finalizing that. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to be holding orientation starting next week to go over all the safety protocols. One of the things that we are really happy to share, as you mentioned, 25% of our 6th grade students chose virtual. That's 49 students. And the numbers fell into a pretty good range for us, where we will not have to make any teaching group changes. All of our students will remain with the teachers that they currently have. And the numbers fall to where our students that have chosen, or families that have chosen the Virtual Learning Academy, are going to receive more synchronous time than I proposed at our town hall. So that is something that we believe is good for our students. We're really thrilled that the numbers fell where they are. And so we can, have a safe start, have the orientations next week, and then begin with cohort A starting on Tuesday, the 27th at White Hill. Cohort B would be the 29th. All right, now 7th and 8th grade. As we mentioned, as Marcy mentioned in previous communication, 7th and 8th grade is a lot different at White Hill. We pride ourselves in offering arguably a high school experience with electives, with course choices, and that's pretty much held true. We also pride ourselves in making sure that we meet the needs of all of our learners all the time. And during distance learning, that's difficult. I'm really proud of our students. I'm really proud of our teachers for adapting and creating a robust distance learning platform. And I think there's been struggles, as we all know, but all in all, it's been a great experience for the majority of our students. So we're going to be working through a reopening schedule for 7th and 8th, and it's going to be a phased opening, as many of you have heard over and over again about phased openings. We're going to work with a plan that prioritizes students with the greatest need. And we're going to be working with our families, with our teachers, and with our students to figure out exactly who those students are, because everyone has a need right now. But we are going to prioritize them. We're going to begin with small learning hubs with a goal to have learning hub opportunities for all of our students. And I'm going to be sending out information to our 7th and 8th grade families very soon about a virtual town hall that we're going to host on October 22nd for 7th and 8th grade parents. We will share ideas. We will give you an opportunity to ask questions, to voice your concerns before we start to roll out as what we're going to do with 7th and 8th grade. So the hope, as it has been for a long time, is that we're going to be able to have school as close to the real thing as possible, as soon as possible. But we have to phase that in so we can do it the right way. So that's kind of where we are at White Hill. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
And I think also the next section, or the rest of the presentation, are answers to parent questions that have come in. So this first part.
Before we do that, can we just super clear? So I think one of the challenges that we have is that in a very real way, the language of educators is kind of different than the language of parents. And being a parent, I know this to be true. So I just want to make super clear that we say very clearly and simply what the opening date is for each of our grades. And so if I understand correctly, not next week, but the following week, we'll begin orientations at the elementary sites and the 6th grade. Is that correct?
So TK through 5th grade orientations begin this week here, starting on the 27th.
Okay. And then the following week will be the beginning of the hybrid instruction for all elementary students who don't select distance learning.
Correct.
Okay. And then middle school?
Middle school, we're going to start our orientations next week. So 1 week from today, the 20th. And our first day of hybrid for cohort A would be the 27th. And the first day of hybrid for cohort B, or in person for cohort B, would be the 29th.
Awesome. And those, that information will go out to all families by Friday.
Yeah, the 6th grade families, they already know the timeline, but as far as their cohort assignment and their orientation date and time, that information will go out by Friday.
Awesome. And elementary schools also by Friday?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Shall we move into our parent questions?
Yes, please.
Good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Salinas, the Director of Human Resources, and I will begin with our first question this evening, which really is asking that during the decision-making process, as we consider reopening schools and negotiating with our labor partners around the MOU, has the district ensured that it is and will offer in-person instruction to the greatest extent possible? And of course, this is referencing Education Code 43504B. And so in responding to this, of course, this is our collective goal, to be able to offer in-person instruction to the greatest extent. So as you may recall, back in August, Marin County's risk level was designated as widespread. And of course, you can see those levels, and fortunately, we have moved out of widespread currently, but at that time, we were still in that designation per the California's Blueprint for a Safer Economy. And so at that time, based on that information, we were required to open schools under a full distance learning model. Now, it's only been since September 29th that schools in Marin County were authorized to resume general in-person instruction. So it's been a short period of time. So despite those challenges and the widespread status of our county, we have worked throughout the summer and through the start of the school year. We've been working to identify in-person teaching and learning models that will do several things. First, provide a high quality educational experience for all students. We want to ensure that student and staff health and safety are in place. And of course, comply with the Marin County Public Health's guided return to site-based classroom instruction. That's a very long title. And its most recent revision was August 12th. So those are really the three things that we are wanting to do. And after considering a number of models, we did conclude that we wanted to put forward the AB model.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and so why AB? And I know that question's out there. So first of all, the process that got us there, there's been a lot of input over a long period of time. And you need to also think about that during this period of time, we kept getting more information about what was happening, what the stats were for COVID, and those sort of things. So there's been a lot of like starts and stops and examine this, examine that. We've looked extensively at 13 different possible hybrid models. And this is where we landed. And it was conversation with our administrative team, which of course includes our site principals and also our district office administrators, our teaching staff, and most particularly our teacher leadership team. We spent a lot of time reading the open response questions that were in the surveys earlier during the summer, and took a lot of feedback from there. And some of the reasons why we landed on AB, we felt for us that having a longer block of time was better for kids and better for teachers. If we were to look at an AM PM, the block we saw as being at least an hour shorter than it would be on A day, B day. There was concern about the number of arrivals and dismissals in an AM PM, and that we wanted to minimize that from happening. And so the simplicity of one group of kids, one cohort arriving and leaving each day. We also thought about time of day preferences. Many families prefer morning time as more of an optimal learning time, and teachers would probably across the board concur that the morning is just a time where our brains are a little bit more woken up and ready to go. The cleaning piece was really big for us, and wanting to make sure that we could have a really deep cleaning and disinfecting between cohorts, so that at the end of Wednesday, the end of our A cohort time, we have ample time in that afternoon to really do a deep clean before the next cohort comes in on Thursday. And we didn't see that during a AM PM was going to be possible, particularly because we are often short-staffed in terms of our custodial staff. Teachers in particular pointed out not wanting to teach the same lesson 2 times. And that when you're teaching the same lesson twice, you're also limiting how much instruction you're able to provide in the course of a single day. thinking about more efficient contact tracing because you've only got one group of kids on campus within a day, minimizing the number of people that arrive on that are on a campus on any given day. And then also in this last bullet point was an important one, really looking for a smooth transition. So not knowing kind of what, we still, none of us really know which direction we're going and what things are going to look like a month from now. And hopefully they're going to be a lot better. And we feel that the AB model is going to allow for a really smooth transition into, for example, a longer day. And so perhaps we will feel like it's time that we can serve a lunch and we can continue instruction in the afternoon. Or it might extend to a full week with larger cohorts coming back. And then at the same time, if the unfortunate circumstance were to happen where we needed to shut back down into distance learning, it would be a really smooth transition there as well. All of that said, to be clear, the AB model is not without its difficulties. And I think that the biggest one there for sure is asking our teachers to provide concurrent instruction for them to be teaching the kids that are in front of them and the kids that are home at the same time. And we're going to do a lot of problem solving around that. And I actually think there's more on that on another slide. So I think I will leave this here. Marcy or anyone else, is there anything you'd like to add before we move on?
I do, actually. This is Anne. When you say nobody really knows what's going to be happening a month from now, I assumed that you meant in terms of COVID and if there's a second.
Thank you. Yes,
Okay.
When we read, a lot about the possible twindemic, right, with the flu season coming, and certainly most of us know other sites where cohorts have had to shut down, and knowing that we can have the flexibility to transition into a full distance learning mode was another reason why we selected this model.
Okay, so you did not mean to say that nobody knows how instruction is going to go a month from now. You just meant we just want to retain our flexibility in order to be easily adaptive to any corona situation that flares up again.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Eric?
All right, thank you, Julia. Thank you, Marcy, Dr. Salinas. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, board. I want to say that when I joined the district unofficially in June and officially in July, these presentations were well underway in terms of really detailing in depth the preparations that Ross Valley schools had been undergoing since the spring. And coming from the Larkspur-Corte-Madera School District, which is a partner school district with whom we have a robust partnership when it comes to talking about teaching and learning, when it comes to collaborating on any number of things, when it comes to collaborating last spring into the summer, into the fall, on how to best approach the immense challenges presented by the pandemic and having to really re-envision school. I was absolutely floored at the level of preparation with the team here at the district office at every school site, and by extension with our community members here in Ross Valley Schools. It's a proud moment to be here through the most challenging time we've ever had to navigate as a society, I might argue, certainly in the realm of education. So with that said, another question that came up is that most Marin districts are back, so why isn't RVSD? And I really appreciate this question so much. And it can be really confusing in Marin because there are so many school districts. There's 19, in fact, in a county that's quite small. And so oftentimes we can be looking over there, over here, and what are they doing? And it's hard because every school district has its own board of trustees, its own governance, and over the decades, its own culture. But what we do as professionals is continue to build networks. We collaborate, we're in communication with teachers and administrators from any number of school districts on a weekly basis to talk about best practice and to help each other through these challenges, because we feel we are one county. It doesn't matter the zip code the kid lives in. They're students that we are here to serve as public educators. And it's easy for me to say that too, 23 years in working in Marin County, in my third school district, 16 years in TAM district, 6 in Larkspur, Corte Madera, the last 4 as principal. So of course I helped them launch virtual learning and their current model right now, which I was proud to do. So what we see is that there are 8 of our 19 school districts that have returned to in-person learning, and we celebrate those districts, and we are going to learn from them. Some of them, again, are quite small. There are more rural districts out in northern and western Marin. And then we have school districts that are a little bit more akin to our size in Ross Valley, Larkspur, Corte Madera being one with 3 schools, Reed schools with 3 campuses. And again, also you see that each district has a very unique approach. Larkspur, Corte Madera, where my own 2 children attend, has an AM/PM 5-day-a-week model. And Reed schools have opted for an AB model very similar to what Ross Valley School District is proposing. Which one's better? I think, as Julia just said, they both have their advantages and they both have their challenges. And you know what? We're working through this and figuring it out together. So schools that have provisionally returned include Kentfield schools, where there's some kind of experimental pods that have started back. Ross Valley School District, that's us. We have had the return of 3 special day class special education classes at the Brookside campus and at the White Hill campus. That's 5 days a week, 4 hours a day. We also have had our early childhood program return. We've also begun to have on-site supports and services for some special ed students, also supports for English language learners. But of course, as we've discussed, our full return to hybrid learning is still off in the future. The Miller Creek School District with 4 schools has also had kind of a soft start with some smaller cohorts. And they anticipate that will extend into January for a full return of all students. And then there's a number of school districts that haven't returned really at all to date. And of course, all of this could change. Mill Valley School District, Lagunitas, Billina Stinson, San Rafael City Schools, which separates into elementary and high school, the elementary not starting back till November, the high school not anticipating a return until January of 21 at the earliest. And that also goes for our neighbors in Tamalpais Union and Novato Unified, and then also the Shoreline District. So we just felt it was really important to clarify that countywide, with all these many districts, it's actually still a less than 50% of districts that have been able to return. Once again, we want to be the first to celebrate and applaud their efforts. They're our colleagues, and we are going to continue to partner with them and learn from them. And we know that their example is going to help guide us to put together the very best program when we're able to bring our students back to full hybrid. And I just wanted to pause if there are any questions or comments on this slide before moving on.
Eric, it's Mark. I'm just curious, for those districts that or have not yet returned, Mill Valley, San Rafael City Elementary, Novato, are they going through this same process right now, trying to decide how to go about this return, much as we're doing? Is this a work in progress that everybody on that part of the list is engaged in right now as well?
I believe, and again, I think in each district, there's a unique set of circumstances, situations, and pressures. that they are contending with from community, also from the negotiating end of things. And so I would be remiss in really detailing, unless you gave me a couple hours here, which we don't have, to go through it. I know for a fact that every single one of those districts has educators just like ours. They love kids. They signed up for this job to serve kids in community. And at the district level, they're still working through different sets of challenges. Certainly they have all, because I've been in touch with a lot of principals, including some superintendents from those different districts. As a side note, my wife is a 20-year teacher in Tam Union High School District herself. And so I get to see what that's like from the teacher end. They're working incredibly hard. They have, I think, at least sketched out what they would like their return to be. But again, I think that it's a testament to just how incredibly hard this situation is. And we as educators, we as a community, as one community in Marin, we need to support each other. And instead of looking over here, over there and saying they're doing it better or they've got it figured out and you guys don't, we want to make sure that we're also offering our support and our good examples of how we've been able to successfully return a group of students to our campuses, how we've successfully been able to put into place staffing, safety equipment, how we've had really positive negotiations with both unions. All these things that are ingredients to a successful return. So, and again, we're hoping to hear good news from those different school districts as to their hopeful return with students.
That one's yours too.
Okay, so thank you so much. So another question. Why is the district pushing to reopen when questions from parents are not clearly and transparently answered? San Jose and Santa Rosa districts have announced that they will wait until 2021 to reopen to ensure they have a smooth and thoughtful transition. Why is RVSD not doing the same? Again, we really appreciate this question, and Marcy brought this up at the beginning. If it doesn't feel that we as a district, whether it's from the district office, whether it's from one of our 5 sites, aren't being clear and transparent, we take full accountability. And it's nights like tonight and information like this that hopefully demonstrates to our community and to the broader scope of Marin County education that we are trying to, as clearly and transparently as possible, share our progress and our victories and also our challenges. And really be open about that. It's certainly how we did things back in Larkspur, Corte Madera, and my experience here in this district has been the exact same. We put it out there. This is hard work, but we are working to serve the very diverse needs of our community, very diverse needs, because there's no one voice that represents the breadth of what is Ross Valley School District, over 2,000 students. And as we've seen in Marin County, there are some other districts that aren't planning to return until 2021. And again, sadly, I don't know that it's because they don't want to. I think that there may be factors that might be getting in the way of that. So our goal this fall has been very clear, is orchestrating a safe and effective return to campus for our students that, again, are opting for in-person. We've already done it with some special ed classes, as well as to continue to support the academic and social emotional growth of those students whose families have opted for virtual learning. And we saw the statistics earlier. That's a significant group of our community, and we are equally dedicated to serving their needs. Okay, and we doesn't matter if the kid is with us in the classroom or if they're at home. We want them to get a great education. And we have teachers and staff and administrators whose focus every single day, and probably throughout most weekends, is to deliver that education to those kids. And we've done so, as I talked about earlier, in constant dialogue and partnership with our county office, with Marin County Health, neighboring school districts with our staff, and numerous parent outreach efforts. Again, could we always communicate more? Could we always communicate better? The answer is always yes. But our hope from the get-go is to always be clear and open about what our intentions are. And then also, if we're having a struggle, or if we have to, as is the case with us, delay what we initially thought might be the time we could reopen for hybrid, we're going to communicate exactly why. And we're going to show our community that we have addressed those concerns and we're ready to go. And again, wanted to make sure to pause if there's any questions or comments on this slide before moving forward.
Hi, Anne again. I do want to say that I know that that is always our hope and intent. And I do want to acknowledge that there are times when we don't do it as well as we could. And well, actually, that's not true. We always do it as well as we can. But sometimes the way we do it isn't effective for the parent community or the teacher community or whoever we're trying to address. And I really do believe that that is, it's such a tricky thing. As long as I've been doing this, it's been an issue, and you communicate too much, you communicate too little, you don't say the right stuff. And I will just say that I don't want to make the implication, and I don't believe you were wanting to make this either, Eric, but just in case it came off sounding this way, it's not like, oh, we're so great at communicating and anybody who didn't get it. I think we fully acknowledge it's hard to communicate well, and we do our best and we don't always get it right. And we are absolutely committed, I know all of us are, and each of us are, to figuring out how it can be more effective and more useful to the parents and teachers and community, and more efficient and more informational and less overloady, but not too underloady. We really try to calibrate constantly, and the needs shift often, and the requests shift often. So we absolutely encourage folks to say, hey, we need to know more about this. And that's great. We will happily provide that information. We got a rash of emails, a bunch of them, so many. Clearly, there were people who weren't feeling properly communicated with. And I would really like to say, I'm really sorry about that. It wasn't the intent. There was no intent to hide or dissemble or anything like that. There are very real challenges in getting this done. And one of them is getting it clearly communicated when nobody actually knows sometimes how many people will need to hire. And you saw today that number changed dramatically in the course of just a couple of days. So anyway, Eric, I know that you think communication is super important, and I really appreciate that. And I also want to make it clear to those who are feeling not properly communicated with, our intention is not to say, well, you should just listen better. We want to figure out how to do the communicating in a useful way, and we will continue to be committed to doing that. Anyway, I just wanted to interject that.
I agree with that 1000%. In every district I've worked in, both as a teacher and administrator, that's been a challenge that's come up. And a good district, an organization, and a culture that is honest with itself, that's willing to look in the mirror, is going to say just what you said, which is, it's on us. That's why we've got these questions right here for the public to see, documented, so that they can see that we're reflecting their thinking, their critiques, their concerns, and we're answering those questions to the best of our ability. And not just in fluffy ways, but also with actual action plans, in this case, to get kids back to school. And also, too, last point on this is that this this particular question, again, raises a concern about us rushing back too soon. And meanwhile, we have other community members who are concerned that we're going too slow. And so it's hard work, as you said, to calibrate and balance those different needs and perspectives. And that's what makes Ross Valley a really dynamic and amazing place, is that breadth of viewpoints and opinions and perspectives.
Thank you, Eric and Ann. And I do want to add that improving communication is definitely something we will continue to work on. And specifically to this slide is one of the elements, the priorities that has been for us all throughout all of our planning has been the health and safety all of our students, staff, and families. We know that students come to school, they go home, and there may be families who have members of their family who they're caring for, neighbors, their employees who they themselves or their partners, somebody in the household, maybe they're caring for an aging parent or somebody who has a medical condition. And then of course the families, because as we know, none of our students and staff are completely able to remain isolated within their own unit of household, and that they do need to experience their friends, their family, extended family. And so looking for ways to ensure that as we reopen, we continue to prioritize the health and safety of all of our constituents and everybody who comes here to Ross Valley Schools. And so I think through the course of all of the planning that we've done, I think we have definitely met that priority, whether it's on the teaching and learning side with developing our schedule, as well as on the operations side. So I want to also, hopefully for families who are feeling that maybe we're reopening too soon, to know that we do feel that all of our steps are in place to protect the health and safety of all of our students, staff, and families.
So our next question here that I really appreciate being asked, what is RVSD doing to prioritize its students with the greatest needs? For example, special ed, English language learners, socioeconomically disadvantaged, etc. And there's exciting news afoot. First of all, Ross Valley School District, along with our neighboring school districts and schools around Marin County, learned so much from the quick transition of virtual learning in the fall, in the spring, my apologies. And we have really put into place a very robust and rigorous and balanced experience in virtual learning, so much so that, again, speaking about parent feedback, we have heard feedback that says, hey, don't rock the boat. This is really outstanding. Don't go back to hybrid if it means messing this up. That's another perspective. So that's our first level of support for every single student here, robust virtual learning. However, more tangibly in terms of getting kids back to campus to provide that support in person, very exciting that last week, as I mentioned before, 3 special day classes began in-person learning at both Brookside and White Hill for 5 days a week, 4 hours a day. Our early childhood program led by Mr. Matt Molyneux, incredibly exciting to see those 3- and 4-year-olds back on our Brookside campus starting last week, amazing. We have our English learner specialists that gave in-person initial LPAC assessments the week of 9/14 at the district office. That was very special. And for a lot of those students, some of them newcomers to our country, it was their very first experience with a public school in the United States. And that was facilitated by Ms. Angie Kastner and Ms. Kelly Eiler. Absolutely incredible. And then also in-person on-site support began this very week, which is really exciting, getting them to campus to provide direct support. And then site intervention teams are determining which students may need additional on-campus support, sort of like that learning hub idea, and that's different campus by campus. So it's been an area of emphasis from day one, August 19, and now we're seeing the opportunity to be working with kids directly in person to augment that. And I wanted to pause here if there were any comments or questions.
All right. Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate all of your comments. So So another question that we've been asked is a big question about how teachers can balance in-person students and students on Zoom at the same time, and how we're going to be supporting those teachers with training, what students can expect, what families can expect, will teachers have assistance, and the like. And the new term that I've heard for this instruction, rather than simultaneous instruction, education is very good at coming up with new terms, is concurrent instruction. So this idea, right, of teaching kids in different places at the same time is pretty new to us, and we've got a lot to learn about it. And we are going to do everything we can to support our teachers. And I do think, and I have said this before, that some of the most important support that we can give them is allow them to make mistakes and, you know, kind of try things out. It's really, teaching is always this really dynamic, iterative process. You're always engaged in this action research where you're kind of, you're engaging in inquiry, and you're trying to figure out what's going to work, and you try it out, and some parts work and some parts don't, and you adjust, and then you try it again. And it's really creative and wonderful, and that's why we as educators love the job. And so that's the process our teachers will be engaged in. Now, right now, I've been collecting lots and lots and lots of articles. There are actually a couple of local educators who are technology coaches for their districts who have written for Edutopia and a number of other publications that have fantastic ideas. One has put out something called a station rotation, and there's a link right there. Later on, you can click on that and read the article. Just about a way to get your at-home kids and your in-classroom kids engaged in the same task and lesson all at the same time, rotating them through different kinds of stations. We know that collaboration is key, that we always in Ross Valley really focus on sharing best practices. We want to make sure that our teachers have the tools that they need. We provided, thank you very much, Sean Maher, our director of technology, has procured document cameras and headsets and found an app that will allow the iPad to serve as an external monitor. And so we've kind of put this kit together, and Sean worked with a couple of our virtual learning coaches this week, practicing it out with them, created a video, shared that video with our teachers, and then we had a big Q&A session afterwards that was very well attended. It was optional, but nearly all the teachers came, and we got lots more orders of more teachers wanting to try out these different tools. So that is also support that we will be providing our teachers. I so wish that we could provide all of our teachers with an assistant. I know that they would like that right this minute, but I don't think that that's financially feasible. But they are certainly learning how to do this, and they will continue learning and growing. Any questions on that slide? All right. I'm trying to remember whose this one is.
That's yours too.
Okay, thank you, sorry. So what are the options for Cohort C? And this actually takes us back to the beginning of our presentation. And so the model that we've been looking at with the A day, B day, and having a Cohort A, a Cohort B, and a Cohort C has the regular classroom teacher teaching the Cohort C. And in many cases, or probably in most cases, that's what is going to be happening. A teacher is going to have two groups of in-person students and a much smaller group of at-home full virtual learning students. But we do, largely because of staffing and partly, and also largely actually because of parent requests, have some situations where there may be a dedicated virtual learning teacher. We are also looking at, and not sure on this yet, but the possibility of being able to free up a teacher to provide virtual learning support across some of the classrooms, particularly classrooms of teachers who are brand new to us. And so It may look different depending on the site and the grade level. And again, we will continue to work towards finding ways to support our cohort C. Any questions? All right. I think we're ready for Chris Carson.
Yes, that would be me. Thank you, Board President, members of the board, Superintendent Trahan, and staff. My name is Chris Carson, and I have the honor of talking about the learning loss mitigation funding this evening. And the questions around that are just really, how are we using those funds, and is there any leftover input, that type of thing. And as we started digging into that, the first thing to note is that we actually have just under $810,000 in learning loss mitigation funds. As we start looking at how they've been spent to date, we've spent just under $261,000 of those funds. And we've spent it on things such as distance learning, the technology needs that we had, things such as wireless connectivity for students, and things of that nature. We've also spent on materials and software for distance learning. And we've purchased a lot of personal protective equipment, what we'll term PPE. We've also had additional staff time on things such as custodial and teachers, et cetera. You have training that happens as a result of distance learning that has happened as well. As we move forward, we do have just under $550,000 left to be spent, and we'll be purchasing things such as additional PPE. As we go back into school, we'll be using up the existing PPE that we have, and so we'll have to replenish that on an ongoing basis, and so we have funds for that. We're also looking at purchasing air purifiers for our classrooms, which is part of the PPE. And we're looking at potentially additional staffing. With the need for distance learning and the impact on technology, we're looking at different positions such as a Tech 3. As we start to bring students back, we're also looking at things such as library specialists, and we're still in discussions what that would look like. We also would need potentially some additional teachers, or a additional teacher with that. And also with the impact of COVID in the classroom and in the offices, we also have additional cleaning needs. And so we're looking at additional custodians. And in total, that's approximately $350,000 as we've been looking at it. And then as we move forward, we have additional technology needs that still have to be addressed as they relate to distance learning and the impact on the district's technology. And so that leaves a little bit left over of about $4,000 for additional learning loss mitigation costs as we get into actual in-person learning. And so that's really where we're at in terms of the learning loss mitigation funds at this particular juncture. Are there any questions? No?
Chris, it's Mark. When you made your last comment, was it correct that you said there would be $4,000 left, or was it another number? Was it down as low as 4,000 at that point?
That is correct. That's after we do all of the other things that we have plans for. Really, we only have 4,000 in case there's something else that we need, that we ultimately decide that is necessary. And so it doesn't leave a lot left in the learning loss mitigation funds. And so anything above and beyond that $4,000 would have to come out of general fund costs.
Great, thank you.
Alrighty, and the next question is, each school in the district has published a site-specific protection plan. What items are yet to be procured, and what actions are left to complete in order to effectuate these plans and get schools open? How can the parents facilitate this for the whole district immediately? So all of the items that have been outlined in our plans, our operations, have been procured. They might be on their way or in the process of being ordered. So now our focus has been on the staffing and making sure. So anyway, at least immediately, that can be super helpful. And those are live links there, which should show up if anybody downloads the presentation from the agenda item tonight, or they can just go to our HR page on our district website for the open classified positions that we have, such as aid and yard supervision, as well as then some teaching and specialists. We can always use additional long-term subs. The state has done a lot of additional credentialing options for folks who have not yet or not yet in a credential program or so on due to the pandemic and the ability, as we are have been in even pre-COVID times, a teacher shortage. So the Commission on Teacher Credentialing has done some relaxation. And so I know that a lot of our parents are working, but if they happen to know anybody who may be a friend, a neighbor, who isn't currently working, who would like to get on our sub list, we also have an agreement with our classified union. This isn't any different than in any other times, but as long as we are continuing to advertise and recruit, we are able to use folks to come in on a temporary basis to fill any of the openings. So for example, if anyone was looking for something while their child was in school, then there would be the opportunity at a school site to be able to take a part-time position while we're continuing to recruit and fill the vacancies. So that right now is the most immediate need, is to ensure that in a way that, I guess to look at it, that we're in a way overstaffed, that we are able to have folks come in, that if somebody is out due to personal necessity needs, sick leave, maternity disability, whatever it might be, that we would be able to have a quick replacement for them. And I think that with the good work of our curriculum and instruction, Julia, technology, Sean, as well as HR, to be able to put some trainings and protocols in place that are now recorded. And so they don't always require the additional time of those departments, but who can support. So, and also to ensure that folks, as they come into our schools, are trained in our health and safety protocols, as well as any of the technology platforms that we're utilizing. So it doesn't mean that on down the road, we might have some needs also, but the human resources aspect of our operation is really where we are needing some support now. And as the principals, as they determine if there are any volunteer needs or anything like that on the campuses, they'll of course reach out to families. Of course, we'll have to do that in coordination with the 30 guidelines as outlined by the county related to having additional folks on the campus. But I think that's really where we are today. And this next question, or why hasn't or won't the district or created outdoor classrooms? All sites have identified outdoor learning environments, and they will be used throughout the day, depending on the task, the instructional strategy, the whatever the learning opportunity might be at the time. And also because we are having Cohort C as part, there may be the inability to have the teacher connect to the multiple cohorts concurrently, those who are in person and those who are remaining in Cohort C. And so looking at all of our ability with the outdoor learning environments, we certainly have them identified, they will be utilized, but in making the decision to how we're utilizing them has been done in consultation with teachers and administrators. And so they won't be used all day long by any particular class, but they will definitely have access to them. They can move in and out of the four walls of a classroom and out to the outdoor learning environment that have been designated each school. Anything to add on that one or questions?
I'll just chime in and say that for those classrooms that have returned, the 2 SDCs and early childhood program at Brookside and the SDC class at White Hill, the outdoor spaces are equally, if not more, utilized by those teachers and students. And, you know, as we move into fall, and hopefully we have a fall and winter that gives us some rain, that'd be a nice thing. You know, we're going to be communicating about, hey, let's bring a rain jacket. Let's put on some galoshes. And our campuses lend themselves with the breezeways and other features to really allow for lots and lots of learning and interaction happening outdoors. And so those teachers that have those classes underway have been really terrific in pioneering that.
Thank you, Eric and Marcy. This next question has to do with the MOU between our Ross Valley teachers and the district. And the question is there an MOU that's been executed? And the answer to this is yes, there is an agreement between RVTA and the district for in-person learning model for return to school for this school year. And this is in place for TK through 5th grade. That has been completed. What we are continuing on at this time are negotiations for grades 6 through 8. And as you've heard earlier, these look different than TK through 5. And so we want to have some special consideration around those grade levels. So our next opportunity to meet with our labor partners will be this Friday.
And then also, if I can add, one of the things that we know too is that either side, whether it's the teachers or the district, if anything comes up, we will continue to go back to the table and work through any issues that may come up as we are implementing a hybrid and or moving into any of our other in-person options as the year goes on, as we are anticipating, hopefully, that the numbers in Marin will continue to go down. We also, it wasn't addressed in this question per se, but in terms of our classified union, CSEA, we have reached a tentative agreement. It is out right now for ratification by the membership. And we anticipate that, let's see, Esther, I think you have that date off the top of your head. Is that this week?
I believe it's this week.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, that was actually a perfect segue for this next question, which really has to do with the distancing between students. So this is asking, does the MOU require students to be seated 6 feet from one another in the classrooms? And if so, how long is this going to last? So is it going to last the whole year, just a semester? And what if it were the whole year? Could we renegotiate that? And as Marin moves into tier 3, what changes can be made in negotiations? So are classes being held outdoors, a vaccine being available? What are the types of things that would bring us back to the table to negotiate? So as Marcy mentioned, of course, any change, we've already agreed to negotiate those changes. So as a result of the orders and guidance issued by the federal, the state, and Marin public health officers, any in-person learning offered by our district during this pandemic period really will be consistent with the agreement. And so therefore, to answer the first part of this question, we have set forth a minimum physical distance of 6 feet. And that's between all student workspaces, between teachers and student workspaces, and also between employee workspaces. And then, of course, as we've stated, if the public health guidelines specify a different distance, then of course we have agreed to negotiate any of those changes. Are there any questions regarding this slide?
I do want to ask about there is a discrepancy that's really weighing on some people between the 4-foot guidance and the 6-foot guidance. Can you just explain a bit about why some guidance says 4 feet and some guidance says 6 feet?
Because we've had both federal, state, and local, Marin County said 4 to 6, and that was based on the pediatrician recommendation. But also state and federal was saying all of the other guidelines have been consistently 6 feet. And so that is why there's been some discrepancy. But even Marin County Health has given the parameters of from 4 to 6, because we don't just have children on campus, we also have our staff members as well. And so it was in the best interest of all of our people on campus, the little ones and the big ones, that we went with the 6 feet from one another. And not any of my colleagues like to add to that?
Yeah, and that's in keeping with our priority of ensuring that all of our, the health and safety of all of our students and staff. I think also from what I heard recently is that Matt Willis said, although 4 feet is definitely an option, he did say 6 feet is better. So that we also know that through all the epidemiologists, the scientists, the medical professionals have also weighed in. The American Association of Pediatrics even has gone as far as to say that 3 feet of distancing would actually be okay. And so for us, knowing that in order for all of our classes to be able to come back and have, and we also, there's another part of the guideline, which is, or another part of the 30 guidelines, which has to do with, yes, you can have full class sizes in a classroom, but you do need to maintain the distancing. And so none of our classrooms are large enough to be able to have a full class size. And so looking at also with the wanting to maintain the most flow or air capacity between our HVAC systems and being able to take advantage of leaving windows and doors open to the most extent possible, that in the under the possibility that we won't be able to do that at all times. We know that we have had some fires recently that have caused a different a change to our quality of air, that we won't be able to keep the windows and doors open year round. And that was the reason that we have decided to purchase the air purifiers. So distancing, all of our health and safety protocols, we're looking to maximize those. But I do really appreciate what Dr. Salinas pointed out, which is we do have agreement with our union that should anything change, that we would be able to come back and talk about that. So all of our plans that we have done in coordination with, of course, our teachers. And then the purpose of negotiations is to discuss and reach agreement related to the impacts on working conditions. And that's where you get into the negotiations around that. And I am glad to say that we do have the tentative agreement for TK through 5, and looking forward to continue the negotiations and finalize them for our middle school as well.
Thank you, Marcy.
Sure.
This question, also related to the MOU, is asking, does the agreement restrict class or cohort size? And if so, to how many students? And again, can this be renegotiated if Marin reaches tier 3 or a vaccine becomes available? And is there an exemption for outdoor classrooms? Of course, while operating under the phase 3 hybrid model, which is what we'll be moving into, student cohort sizes will be designed to ensure the minimum physical distancing requirements. And that, of course, will be the 6 feet. And it also states that it won't exceed half of the class size referenced in the collective bargaining agreement. Here you see the abbreviation of CBA, the collective bargaining agreement. And so in that case, so for example, TK through 3 is at a class size of 24:1. So if we were to have half of that size, that would be a cohort of 12. And so what the agreement is saying is that we wouldn't exceed a cohort or a half-size class of 12. Of course, in grades 4 through 8, that number, we try to, it can go up higher, but our collective bargaining agreement states that we want to keep it to 27. And then, of course, there might be a chance that maybe classes aren't divided completely half size or equally. And so if that were to occur, so for example, let's say a cohort was at 13, the principal would consult with the teacher before they would move forward with setting a class at 13 students. The next part of this question is, well, is there an exemption for outdoor classrooms? And there is not. In other words, a cohort is a cohort, whether it's indoors or it's outdoors. And so the flexibility to go inside or have class outside, we will maintain that same cohort together. And as you've already heard before, we will be able to negotiate with our partners should there be any changes to the public health restrictions. And so we will come back and have those conversations so that we can make those shifts and adjustments. Any questions? All right. Now this question is a long one, but essentially this question has to do with how the district is making decisions and what is the basis for the decisions. So some of the decisions were to, for the length of time we were closed to in-person instruction. So how much time we were spending in virtual instruction. And then also the number of hours per week of in-person instruction. How did we come to these decisions? And then of course, in the hybrid model, we're looking at what guidance or order from a state public health officer or local health officer are we basing this on? And then Education Code 43503, Section A2A. So specifically, what are we looking at? What were we basing the decision making on? So that's a big question, and we've added some comments here. But first, we again wanted to state that our return to in-person instruction and learning is dependent on numerous factors, as we've been discussing over the many weeks. And of course, the most important and chief among these really is the guidance that we are receiving from local and state public health to ensure the safety of our students and the safety of our staff members. Now, specifically what we're using are the guidelines, the Marin County Public Health Guided Return to Site-Based Classroom Instruction. And the latest and most recent revision to this was on August 12th, 2020. So that really is the foundation for which we look at safety. And then this was further clarified, Senate Bill 98. The intent of Senate Bill 98 was clarified with a letter from Senator Mitchell and Assemblyperson Ting to respectively the California Senate and Assembly with enactment messages. And really what this message was to clarify the intent that what Section 43503 was doing was granting flexibility to, and here is another acronym, LEA, which is a local educational agency, and in our case, it's our district, Ross Valley School District. So it grants our district flexibility to determine what instructional model we will adopt during the COVID-19 pandemic. And then it goes on further to state that we want to take into account several things. We want to take into account the needs of our students, the needs of our staff, and our available infrastructure. And then provide a model that adheres to our local public health order and guidance. So to answer this complex question, it really is, what are we basing our decisions on? And it really comes down to the guidance that we are receiving from the county and the state, and that has been further clarified in these enactment messages. And I might note that for those who download, if you click on the California Senate and the California Assembly, you can actually read the entirety of those enactment messages when you have the opportunity to do so.
All right, thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
And that takes us into our last question of the evening, which is please provide a timeline of the specific steps needed for reopening all district schools for all grade levels TK through 8. And I think that our previous slides, especially those at the beginning of the presentation, do outline the timeline for the enactment. And as Matt pointed out in his slide, is that we are still working on 7th and 8th grades, but in terms of being able to move forward with bringing kids onto the campus, that's well in the works. So again, what's currently taking place, and I missed adding a bullet on this one, but our staffing determinations, shifting some teachers to virtual learning, filling classified positions, as creating and expanding our substitute pool and protocols, both on the classified and certificated, and the technology procurement, orientation planning, and then of course, finalizing negotiations for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and at the 7th and 8th grade, finalizing those schedules. So we do have belief that the timeline for bringing students back into or starting our phase 3 will be occurring now and will continue to occur until all of our TK through 8th grade students will be sharing more information, as Matt described, on the 7th and 8th grade. And then in terms of when we get to move into a next phase, which would be after the hybrid model, would be more robust or greater opportunity for students to be on campus for longer periods of time. And that we'll be waiting for to see how things go as we return, to be monitoring the numbers and working with the county health department to ensure that any continued phasing in of our return to a full return is done, again, with prioritizing staff and student health and safety, and continuing to adjust our instructional models and continue planning. So in terms of exactly when we'll be back into a full reopening, we are working on that. That has a lot yet to remain seen, and we'll continue to keep our families updated as to our progress related to all of this. And as I did explain to folks, and we'll be able to do this, as tonight is our reopening update, and then tomorrow we'll be able to send an email out to all families providing an update as well. And then, as I mentioned early on in the presentation, that the principals at the elementary level as well as the middle school were providing information to their parents this Friday, the 16th. So I think that takes any questions. Anything to add? All right. So that leads us into trustees. Any questions, comments?
Colleagues?
No, thank you for breaking out each of those questions from the various emails that we received and read, and addressing each one of them. I think that was very helpful. And I know, I'm a parent in this district, and throughout my term, I have been a parent, and I think it's important to be able to hear parents' voices. And I believe that that's the kind of district that we have. And I very much appreciate us and you taking the time, step by step, to respond to each of those questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcus. And Elisa, I agree with that and appreciate the clarity and clearness of this message, and appreciate what Anne and the discussion that Anne and Eric had about our communication, and want to echo that while I'm very impressed always with the work that we are doing. I know that there is always improvement to do on communication, and I think we heard that loudly and clearly, and would advocate that we continue to have regular communication with our families about the work that we're doing, even when it's messages that may not seem like something families will want to hear. I think we want to be very clear with the process and the progress that we're making towards getting back to what we would love to see, which is everyone in school, as was the case before COVID. So I would just advocate that we continue to do our best to communicate clearly and often with our families.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. And we'll be looking to refine and hone those communications and look at how we are doing that to ensure that they best meet all of our families' needs.
Thank you.
This is Wesley speaking. I just wanted to speak in general to the members of the constituency that took the time out of their busy schedules so that I could hear their voices. Work behind the scenes to try and see what kind of interest can be provided in these difficult times. I am excited to hear the news of return to school. I know that it's not going to be what everybody wants, but we're trying to get the kids back in the classroom, and that's going to happen quite shortly. So I just want to thank the public for taking the time to speak with me, to help me do what I can to try and help move this whole thing forward.
Agreed. Yes. And the questions are necessary to help refine our thought processes and the actions that we are taking, and to help us understand where folks are coming from and what their needs are as well. So thank you, and very much agreed.
This is Ryan. I'd want to just thank everybody for a lot of hard work, and to try to remind everybody, regardless of how you feel, what works best for your child in general, because as a parent as well, we all have those opinions of what we think is best for our child. But I wanted to remind everybody that this is a community, and we only work when everybody is heard and everybody is appreciated. And there's a lot of different opinions of how we should do this. One thing I can guarantee you from talking to this staff and this group and my colleagues is that everyone is on the same page and the same sheet of music when it comes to wanting what's best for all children. And I want to remind everybody that it's just not children. It is custodial staff. It is teachers. It is support staff. It's a community, and we are all in difficult decisions and difficult financial obligations, and everybody has some skin in this game. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the people that are working hard to try to incorporate everyone, and to remind everybody, parents and everybody in the community, that it's still our community. It's us. It's all of us together that will get through this with flying colors if we all trust that our motivations are proper and our motivations are for the best for all of the community.
Thank you, Ryan.
If you're waiting for me, I'm tired of my own voice at this point, so I have no further questions.
All right, thank you all so very much, and we'll be looking forward to giving you, as we have our next board meeting, providing another update.
Terrific. And thank you all very much. I thought that was super clear. I'm sure we'll hear if it was super clear to people who aren't us, and we'll try to explain it more or differently if it wasn't. Okie doke. Moving on.